This series of videos is all about project objectives and risk. So first of all, let's look at project objectives. So the project objectives are what we want to achieve with the project. Obviously we want to produce the project deliverables that are fit for purpose. So for a consultancy project, though, the question is, do they meet the client's needs as stated by the client? The scope is, have you provided all of what is required? The time, have you delivered it at or before the agreed time? Cost, have you delivered it at or below the agreed budget? So that's the budget for your company, if you like. And for construction contracts, we are especially concerned about environment, that we're minimising or environmental damage. Nuisance, this is odour, noise, insects that can cause quite a lot of disturbance to neighbours and people living around the area. So we want to reduce that as much as possible. Safety, that is the one objective here that is not compromised at all. The work has to be done safely so that workers and members of the public are safe and healthy. So you don't compromise safety to save money, for example. So that's why we say that safety is the one of these objectives that aren't compromised. So those are the ones that I've sort of come up with. There may be more, but it's quite a useful thing to think about, those 8 objectives there. So objectives, parameters, constraints, much the same thing. Objectives are the result that a person or team aims to achieve. A parameter is a limit that affects how something can be done, and a constraint is anything that restricts or dictates the actions of the project team. So your objectives are to do the work within your constraints. So there are things that constrain you. So for example, in the past we've sort of talked about the quality cost time triangle, which has been revised to include that quality has been split into scope and quality. So what this rectangle sort of shows is that you've got to balance each one of these things. Okay, so for example, if you want to do the job really quickly, then it's going to cost more, or you might have to reduce the scope, or you might have to reduce the quality. Um, so or you might have to do a combination of them. If you want to do a high quality job, if you want to provide something that really meets all of the client's requirements, then you might have to spend a bit more because it's going to take longer to design it. And that's going to mean more time. So what this shows is that each one of these things don't exist alone, and they all affect each other, which means you have to compromise. You can't do something really cheaply in a quick time and come up with a high quality. It's just not going to work that way. Something has to give, something has to be compromised. So that's one of the things about project management, is you've got to decide what is really important to you. Now they're all important to you, but what is really, really important, because remembering that you're going to have to compromise a little bit on one or the other. And one way of helping you do this is what's called a paired comparison. This is where you determine the relative importance of each objective. So you've got this table here, and what you do is you look at scope versus quality, which is more important. Now with say a construction project, it doesn't really matter. They're both equal, first equal. You are contractually bound to provide all of the work at the required quality. So this is first equal, if you like, or 0. But with scope versus time, you are required to provide to do all of the work. And if it takes you a little bit extra time, then that's fine. So in this case here, scope would be the more important one, so you put an S there. And scope versus cost, you are contractually bound to do the job, and if it costs you a little bit more, then so be it. So once again, scope, sort of you put an S in there. So you'd add it up, 2 S's, scope would score 2. Then you start doing the comparison, quality versus cost. Obviously quality, we're contractually bound to produce the deliverables to a set quality, so quality is going to win that one. And cost versus time, it comes down to what's more important to you. Do you want to complete it really quickly, or cost. Usually it would be cost would be the more important one to the company. Quality versus time quality. So then you add up the values for each one of them, and the one that scores the most, the one that is most valuable, is what you need to focus on. You'll find that if you do it for a construction project, usually scope and quality usually sit there at the top, and then these two sort of muck around at the bottom. But it all depends on the circumstances of the project.